The IMF wants your money and they want it now. Behind the scenes, the IMF is going to print hundreds of billions of dollars and they're going to steal trillions of taxpayers' money around the world. The IMF is slowly gaining more global dominance and more global power, and they're now starting to demand more money from large wealthy countries like the US, Australia, UK and Canada. This is all part of the big reset that is going to come. A new financial system is on the way. Your money is going to be devalued into the ground, and then good old problem, reaction, solution. They'll create the problem and then they'll create the solution as well. In this video, I'm going to be going off the IMF SDR, which stands for Special Drawing Rights. And that's just pretty much a pool of global currencies. And that's made up mostly of the US dollar, the euro, Chinese yuan, Japanese yen, and pound sterling. I'm going to go over why the IMF wants to create more of this SDR and is demanding more currencies to create more SDR. And they're going to demand it from US taxpayers and Australian taxpayers. And I'm going to go over a bit about the financial system as a whole. This is a very, very important video. You must watch it to the end because we are on the verge of a big reset and a new financial system because the current one is failing. Okay, so like I was saying, the IMF wants to create more SDR, or pretty much their own units of measures of currency, and the way they're going to do this is by demanding money from the US. It says here, will Biden force US taxpayers to fund a massive International Monetary Fund bailout for China? And I'm going to play a clip where Janet Yellen, the US Treasury Secretary, gets grilled about this and how she gets all defenseless and she's like, look, I don't really want to get into this now. I'll get into this with you offline.
I want to stay within my time and I need to ask Secretary Yellen a question. Secretary Yellen, the Biden administration's plan, and it is your plan, to require the IMF to issue $1 trillion of these SDRs, new SDRs, is going to cost the American taxpayer about $180 billion. Now, your reason for doing that is a good reason. You say you want to help poor countries. But you and I both know that only about 10% of that money is going to go to poor countries. It's not going to help poor countries. It's going to help if they cash in their SDRs. It's going to help China. It's going to help Russia. It's going to help Venezuela. And besides that, under your plan, you're intentionally splitting the plan into two tranches of $500 billion each to avoid having to come before Congress. And I don't understand why it is efficient to charge the American taxpayer $180 billion, all of which we have to borrow, and you say you're doing it to help poor countries, and only 10% is going to poor countries, and even more is going to Russia and to China.
I'm sorry, it's not going to cost the taxpayer $180 billion.
Sure it is. You have to borrow the money. You don't have the money sitting in a checking account.
They're
going to redeem those SDRs, not just the poor countries, but China.
And I think that was spot on. The IMF says, look, we're going to get all this money to help out all these poor countries. We're such good, we're so kind and helpful, but really a lot of this money is going to go to China, and China has had a lot of debt issues and they've done a lot of shark loans to poorer countries that it can't repay that money back. So then that means they're going to draw on the SDR from the international IMF pretty much to bail them out. And look at Janet Yellen's response.
There are many countries that can provide hard currencies in return for SDRs, including the United States. If the United States does agree to provide SDRs, it will have to issue treasury bills or debt to do it, but it will also I'm sorry, but it will also earn interest on any amounts that it converts on behalf of other countries, and it will be essentially a wash.
But the money will never be paid
back. And it will pay. There is no money to be paid back. Sure. It doesn't matter. The interest that we earn on any excess SDR holdings offsets the cost of issuing treasuries, and it's essentially a wash. And it is not costly.
I disagree with you, Madam Secretary. I think no disrespect, but I think you're wrong. I think we're going to have to borrow all $180 billion of this.
I don't know where you got a number like that from.
Well, when China comes to redeem its SDRs and says we want dollars, where do you think we're going to get the money? We're going to borrow it. I've gone over. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, but this is an important issue. I'll call you, Madam Secretary.
Okay, I'd be glad to talk about it offline.
So as you can see there, it looks like she's getting pretty nervous. She's getting grilled pretty hard there. And, you know, she's doing pretty good for an old Sheila. This is trying to say, look, this is not going to cost the taxpayers any money, but it definitely is. And as you can see there, she's like, I'll be glad to talk about this online. aka, I can't say this publicly because there's going to be some big things going down. And as you can see there, she's doing a sneaky. She's trying to split it up into two $500 billion payments so it doesn't have to go through Congress. And this is something you're not really seeing all over the media, and it's something a lot of people don't know about. And it's not just happening in the US, Australia is donating around $6 billion to the IMF as well. And I haven't seen anything about that in Australian media at all. And like John Kennedy is saying here, a lot of that money, 90% of it will probably go to China. And China is one of the main proponents of the IMF, of the WHO, of the World Bank, of the BIS. And really China is the poster boy on how to control and surveil your citizens. So of course all these global entities absolutely love China. And have a look at this. If approved, the current SDR would increase tenfold, of a current level of 288 billion to 2.8 trillion. In what would be money printing on a global scale. Because guess what? They haven't printed enough money. They haven't devalued the currency enough in the US and Australia, pretty much everywhere. So now they're going to have to do it on a global scale. Have a listen to this. US allocation of SDRs, currently 55 billion, would also rise exceptionally, and the United States Treasury, as the IMF principal designated participant, could be forced to fund an additional foreign exchange transactions up to 1.5 trillion. And who's paying that? Us, the taxpayers. And it says here, with a huge inflush of cash from American taxpayers, those developing country debtors could repay their Chinese loans with no accompanying IMF effort to force Beijing to restructure or forgive them. The potential SDR windfall for China could run into the hundreds of billions, and Beijing's debt trap could continue. And this comes at a time where dollar shares of global reserve fall to their lowest level since 1995. Everyone, this should be ringing alarm bells in your head. Around the world, all the government and central banks are saying we're having a great recovery, everything's going good, there's no issues with all the amount of money we printed, there's no issues with the amount of debt, and everything's going to be fine. But guess what? Behind the scenes, there is panic, and behind the scenes, things are failing. And they're having to throw money and print money to cover it up. And they keep saying, look, all this trillions of dollars of debt, that's not an issue. We'll just inflate away the debt, or we'll just grow the economy faster than the debt. And printing all these trillions of dollars, that's not an issue as well. Well, if that's the case, why don't you increase the debt from 28 trillion to 60 trillion? If printing money is not a problem, why don't you print money like crazy and give everyone $10,000, $100,000 stimulus checks into their bank account straight away? Well, obviously that will cause a problem. The governments won't be able to repay their debt, and guess what? They can't repay their debt at these levels. That's why they're trying to inflate away the debt and try to hide inflation and downplay inflation, because they can't afford to lift interest rates, because then they're going to default on their debt. And what would happen if they gave everyone $10,000, $100,000 stimulus? Well, there would be hyperinflation. But there's still going to be high inflation from these $1,400 stimulus checks in the US, and even in Australia we gave $750 payments. We had JobKeeper, we had JobSeeker increased. They had huge amounts of stimulus in Australia here as well. So with 10,000, 100,000 will have an effect on inflation. Would it be the same case for the amount of stimulus they've done already? But they keep saying, nah, it's not going to be an issue at all, but it definitely is. And what is happening right now is we're getting closer and closer to globalization of everything, and getting closer and closer to a new global structure. And before, everyone thought that was just a theory, that was just crazy talk. But guess what? It's happening right now in front of our eyes. The US is slowly losing dominance. And like they said in the Great Reset, the US wouldn't be the dominant player anymore. It would most likely be China. And it looks like we're heading that way. And all these global entities like the IMF, the WHO, the World Bank, the BIS, they all love China. And something you have to know, the government and the banks, they're all the same now. Janet Yellen, just before she became the secretary, she was receiving millions and millions of dollars from banks to come and speak at their events. And it's not just the case with Janet Yellen, it's a revolving door. They go work for banks, they leave the banks, go into politics, they create all these schemes that benefit the banks, and they go back to work for the banks and create billions of dollars, and throughout their careers they make billions. And I'm just shocked that more people don't see what's happening. It's happening everywhere, and the corruption is right in front of our face. But I guess they just think people are too blind and too stupid not to see it. But I know my community that I'm building here, we all see it. And what you have to know, the current financial system is failing. And that's why the IMF is trying to create this new currency, this new SDR, while the Federal Reserve has said they're working on a digital dollar, and they said they've got that as a high priority because China is winning the race. They've already created their digital yuan, and they've been doing helicopter money. They've been giving airdrops out to their citizens so they get some of their currency. They're bribing them to lose all their privacy. So they create a wallet, and then the Chinese government will deposit money into their digital wallet, and they can target where to spend. They can control the economy more. They can pick the winners and they can pick the losers. And this is what's going to happen during the next financial crisis. they're not going to be able to print money fast enough, and they're not going to be able to approve stimulus fast enough. So they're going to give unprecedented powers to the central banks, like what's happened through every crisis. They've got more and more powers. And what the Federal Reserve actually did last year, when the stock market was crashing 40% and on verge of economic collapse, they did something which was not part of the Federal Reserve Act, and they bailed out the stock market almost directly, and they started buying corporate bonds. They were buying even Apple bonds. Why would Apple need the Fed to go out there and bail them out? They did better than ever. So like I was saying, what's going to happen during the next crisis is they're going to create this digital currency, and if things start to look bad, well then guess what? They'll say, download a wallet with us. We'll give you $1,000 like that. But hey, you got to spend it here, or hey, you've got 6 months to spend it. Or for example, you're going to lose $10 every day you don't spend it. And you may think, oh, that's great, free money. But you're selling your freedom, you're selling your privacy, and you're selling away your purchasing power. And what I find is absolutely laughable is they just keep doing the same thing. And what is insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. They printed $700 billion. And guess what? The real economy didn't recover. And now during this recession, they printed 10 times, $7 trillion. And guess what? This money printing has a law of diminishing returns. So during the next crisis, they're going to have to print $50 to $100 trillion. But by that time, when people start saying Fed prints 50 billion, $100 trillion, people are just going to start losing faith in the currency. And that is ultimately when hyperinflation comes, when people lose faith in the currency. And another thing you have to know is debasement is theft, inflation is just another hidden tax, and they are devaluing your currency rapidly. They've created 25 to 40% of all currency in existence has been created just over the past 12 to 18 months. So while your digits in your bank account may seem like it's the same, in real terms, your purchasing power has been devalued significantly. And for example, if you're working hard, you were earning $70,000, $80,000 last year. Well, guess what? You're still giving the same amount of labor. You're still giving up the most valuable asset, your time here on earth, the time you could be spending with your family. But now they're paying you less. Okay, so now you know this, what can you do and what am I doing? Well, I do see there's going to be more money printing. The economy has not recovered. This has been a fake recovery. This has been a fake out. They've discovered the problem with more money, and they're going to have to keep the money printing going. They can't turn it off. And even though I expect the amount of money printing to slow, they're not going to be able to stop it. Now, this is not financial advice, but just what I'm doing is you're going to want to protect your wealth and hedge against inflation. And what has historically been a good hedge against inflation is precious metals, and Bitcoin has now proven itself as a good inflation hedge. So what am I doing? I'm investing in precious metals, hard precious metals, not just the paper version, the real hard metals. And I'm also investing in Bitcoin as a hedge. And you'd want some defensive stocks like mining stocks and stocks that are recession proof, like grocery malls and farmland, etc. Everyone, I urge you, you have to wake up now. The corruption is right in front of your face. The theft is right in front of your face. People are slowly waking up. I can tell in the comment section, people are waking up to what the central banks and governments are doing. And together, hopefully we can bring about change. For all my loyal viewers and subscribers still watching, you're awesome. I just want to say thank you for all of your support. The channel has absolutely taken off, and I'm loving the community we're building here. And if you haven't already, please hit that like and subscribe button. I'll keep you all updated in the latest that's happening in the housing market and in the global economy. I'll pop up my other videos here. If you're bored, I'll see you there.